So I'm a medium, as you know, and I do a lot of time and work proving to people that there's life after death. And I do this by giving evidence and proof from spirit people to people here on Earth to prove that the afterlife is a reality. So people ask me, say, well, if you can do that, if you can communicate, which is a form of telepathy, with those in the spirit world, can't you also communicate with people on other planets? I mean, they say that telepathy has no distance in it. It can communicate. Telepathy experiments were done with some of the Apollo missions, where they were using Zener cards to do experiments to see if telepathy could work over a distance. Things like that had happened. So, and most telepathy says that, most telepathy experiments have said that, it doesn't seem to make any difference how much space there is between the two people for the tests to kind of work, although it's disputed by science, of course. And there's been a lot of talk around for a long, long time, ever since the books by von Däniken, I remember reading when they came out and being absolutely intrigued by this idea that ancient space visitors had left clues to their visiting our planet in previous ages, and from that also came lots of ideas and theories about, for example, you might have heard of the idea of the Council of Nine, a sort of an overseeing space people that look after the people on Earth to make sure that we don't get into trouble. I mean, these were stories or ideas perhaps put forward by Phyllis Schmeller, I seem to remember, if I got the name right. And there was also a lot of talk also right the way back through, the whole of my career, really, right back to the time when Uri Geller was saying that his powers came from the Council of Nine, and that his spoon-bending powers came from an encounter he had with UFOs. And of course, all the work with the remote viewers. These were the people that were employed legitimately by during the Cold War, to see if they could spy on Russian bunkers and Russian missile sites, to see if they could use their intuition to give some information about things that the satellites missed. So there was lots going on. Like I say, Uri Geller, von Däniken, all these people were talking about the idea that there is life on other planets. But I've not personally had any messages from people from other planets, and in fact any encounters I've had with that have been more than upsetting, because I remember early on in my career when I was first developing my mediumship, and at that point, when you first learn and when you first encounter mediumship, you don't know who's real and who's not, and you don't realise that 99.9% of so many psychics and mediums are complete fantasists or not real, or think they're real and aren't. The very, very few people really have the gift. And I remember seeing this one girl that claimed to be able to communicate with aliens, and I sat with a group of people and watched her and was absolutely horrified with what I saw, because she was talking in a squeaky voice that, "We are here from the other worlds to give you messages of love," and all this absolute trance nonsense that I thought, well, no good to me, I'm afraid, because the problem is there's no evidence in it, right? I mean, I've seen trance mediums too do much the same thing. I mean, there used to be a lady called Betty Deer that Jane and I used to watch sometimes, and she used to give messages from her spirit guides with adverts in between, and a Chinese voice. So she used to sort of go, "Greetings from the spirit world. I am here with the sister here who would need a lift tomorrow to go to the spiritist church." So you get these little adverts that she needs a lift halfway through the communication. But the problem with the UFO ones, and there's so much trance mediumship too, I have to say, is that there's no evidence, there's no proof. And without the proof, it's complete nonsense, because it's fantasy, And also there's that guy out there, I don't remember his name, who channels dolphins, Oh dear, dolphins, I'm sure dolphins are highly evolved spiritual beings, I'm sure, and they may have telepathic powers between each other. I could quite accept that. But to communicate through a human that makes lots of whistling noises, where do we draw the line on these things? And this is where I find the problem I personally have with the whole idea of channeled messages from the spirit, from the spirit world, from UFOs and other sources, because we have no proof. Now, if a medium was able to give a channeled message from another planet, and give some information that was valid that we couldn't possibly know, maybe if those people were highly advanced, a mathematical code of some sort that we don't know anything about, some piece of formula or something, E=mc², a new one, that could be proven, or tell us something that we don't know, or something we could get some verifiable facts, then I can buy into it. But there's so much of it that I worry about, and I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm not saying it's not true, but I'm just saying that we need verification, and my worry is that there's so much fantasy involved. Now, I remember being told a story. Somebody, I'm very into Eastern stuff, as you know, and I take a lot of the stuff that some of the great teachers of India have told us as real, because so much of what they say is true. For example, Sathya Sai Baba was a person who I followed a great deal when he was here. And somebody I knew had spoke about a time when someone asked him about UFOs, and he took a group of students into a forest reserve somewhere where there was lots of wild animals, and they sat down for food, and they were sat down in a sort of a horseshoe shape with Sai Baba in the centre of the group. And there was one student that was very keen, and asked him and asked about all the differing accounts about UFOs and if they're real or not, and what did he have to say about them, And Sai Baba just looked at the young man and began to answer, but at the moment, in the field behind him, right behind him, broad daylight, a UFO appeared in the sky, which everybody could see. All of them could see this huge UFO in the sky, and it appeared there and just hovered there in the sky above the group, because a lot of people have been saying, Sai Baba must be from another planet to have all these powerful powers and so forth. And he didn't even look back at it, and he just said calmly, UFOs are just imagination, and then the craft disappeared. Now, Sai Baba has been known to give mind-boggling things to people. Sometimes he used to do things that would just flip the mind when he would do miraculous materializations, and then other times he'd deliberately palm it in front of people and completely flip everybody out, saying, "Hey, this guy's cheating," So you didn't know where you were. It always fuddled the mind like this. So that was what Sai Baba said. And then also, I've been reading a lot of Yogananda's books recently, and the books about Yogananda, and he talks about life on other planets too, and I take his word as very strong as well. If you've ever read the works of Yogananda, I take that as very strong a testimonial of a man that was hugely intuitive. And even when, I've also encountered the Nadis in India and many other secret texts that I've been involved in, that give this incredible proof by telling my name in the time I'm looking at it, and knows all things about me to give proof that it's a real oracle that's actually written about my life and so forth, with mind-boggling facts put in it that nobody could possibly know, people writing 10,000 years ago. And in some of those, although I haven't directly experienced it, but a number of people who have worked very closely with the Nadis, in those Nadi oracles, they talk sometimes about life on other planets. And this is people writing to us 5,000 to 10,000 years ago, if you can buy into what I'm saying here, because it's a big ask. And recently, I wrote a new book recently. I'm not just plugging it, but my book, God is Everywhere. This is a book I wrote about Sharavana Baba, a man that came to our house, an Indian teacher. And at one point, we were with him, and he went into a special trance, which is called the Naga, where he's in touch with the Naga Loka. And these are like the snake worlds, as they call it. Now, it's a long story, but there's this idea in Indian teachings of the Naga levels, And when you think about it, and I often wonder, and in my book I've also spoken a lot about whether these other worlds, these snake worlds as such, are perhaps a contact with the spirit, with the people in other planets, okay? Because very often the snake is the bringer of knowledge, isn't it? The snake is often the bringer of knowledge. And some of the things I've written about there are about how they believe that the snakes and mankind the snakes came from another universe, and the snakes and mankind had a kind of a mutual understanding, but we as the people turned against them and destroyed them in distant past, in centuries and centuries ago. It's quite a long story. You'd have to read it really to see the full details in it, but I've explained some of my thoughts about that in the book there, and puzzled really over what it all means. I don't give you a definitive answer. I can't, because you have to do it from your own personal experience. And going back to the idea of people channeling dolphins, do you remember the Dr. John Lilly that used to write about his experiments with living with dolphins and telepathic communication with dolphins? I thought he was a very interesting man. But one of the things he said is, in the providence of the mind, what you believe to be true comes true. Okay, now that's a paraphrase of what he said, but it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because do we make all these things happen? Are we falling into an illusion, or are we discovering something real? I worry a lot about what I see out there, because some of the people that talk about UFOs and things, it's as if they got the facts, they got the idea, and then they just look for evidence and kind of twist everything into the evidence. So some people see number 9 everywhere, since we talked about the Council of 9. And yet there's another whole group of people that have this whole thing about the number 23, for example, and everything's significant about where 23 is. And then there's also there's this planet Saturn that everybody sees everywhere, and suddenly that becomes relevant, and the symbol of Saturn becomes important. It's as if we kind of start to seek out what we're looking for, and we kind of blinker ourselves to everything else sometimes. I think there's something in human psychology that kind of sees what it wants to see. Science does that too, but we mustn't also fall victim to that, you see, because we've taken a belief, this is what we believe, and now let's make the facts fit it. And I'm not saying that's the whole case by any means, but I think that is a danger of what can happen when we go into this whole world of looking at what UFOs are about. We've got to have kind of evidence, but that evidence has also got to become under scrutiny, and we mustn't sort of blinker our evidence to say, is this because, and blind ourselves. So anyway, from my point of view, I haven't personally felt anything from other planets when I've talked, but maybe things will change, but at the moment, my understanding is that I accept that certainly that there must be life on other planets, without a doubt. The scale of the universe, it seems preposterous that there's not. We don't have proof of that. I think it's unlikely that visitors from outer space have actually visited the Earth because of the sheer logistics of distance, certainly not in any way we would understand. Whether there can be some form of mental connection between the two places, I think there is a possibility of that. But I've yet to see something that I would say this is definitive proof. My mind's still kind of open at the minute. For me, the jury's still out. But anyway, some interesting thoughts there, aren't there? And I'd be very interested to see what you have to say in the comments below, and it might make some interesting videos for the future. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next time.